Katie wanted to know everything that was going on. If Mark and Jackie were talking, she would be nearby. When the teenagers were around, she would constantly interrupt them or ask to be involved in their plans. She did not want to be alone, but she could not relax and enjoy herself when she was with any family member. Rather, her energy seemed entirely taken with finding ways to get something or take charge of the activity. When redirected, she would sulk or complain. By now, the teenagers were losing their patience with her. Diane had given Katie some old dolls, all of which she had destroyed. She had also taken money from Matthew's wallet and destroyed John's watch. They had begun avoiding her, which meant they spent less time with Jackie and more time shut away in their rooms or out with friends. The atmosphere at home had become tense and angry, and even Jackie and Mark had begun to quarrel over numerous small things. Welcome back to the series looking at Daniel Hughes' Building the Bonds of Attachment. I suspect that little extract wasn't how you imagined this episode to begin, but the fact is, this is what reality's like. Jackie isn't superhuman, there will be stresses. I'd hate to give the illusion that anyone on Earth could manage with someone like Katie 24/7 and not feel worn down at points. It's a massive ordeal. That's why it's so important Jackie is in close contact with Allison. That's why before every therapy session, Allison and Jackie have a catch-up while Katie waits outside, because in this kind of therapy, Allison's job is as much to help Jackie deal with her stresses as it is to support Katie. Hopefully you know by now what Katie's like. She's restless in the company of others, but also can't bear the thought of being left out or not being in control of things. There are strains on the family precisely because Katie is a part of the family now, and so it is important for Jackie and her husband Mark, he crops up more later in the story, that they can both maintain hope, have space for their stresses, and continue providing the pace attitude. I just wanted to stress that as a general point before we got going this episode, which should hopefully be quite an endearing one because it's Katie's birthday, so let's get on to it. On the 4th of August 1994, Katie became 7 years old. Allison and Jackie had discussed her birthday in the last therapy session. They knew that Katie would find a way to ruin it. There had not been one happy and fun activity since she had been in Jackie's home that had not left her tense and irritable. This is a point we have touched on before. To Katie, enjoyment and delight and gifts aren't things to be trusted any more than a Trojan horse. The experience can either feel like a trick or else overwhelm her, to which I'll endlessly refer back to the poo in Verghelet incident. Throw this kid who's used pretty much entirely to miserable situations into a massive party full of fun. Of course, it's a bit of an overload, and she reverts back to re-establishing a more familiar tone. There's lots of reasons why being given gifts can be hard for any of us. Maybe they feel like a trick, or maybe we feel anxious like we don't deserve a gift, or maybe we're worried we might not appreciate it or take as much care as the giver hopes. Maybe just the idea of letting people be nice to us feels a bit vulnerable. I guess in a general sense, if we tend to believe that we're someone bad who destroys or ruins every good thing they ever encountered, then I guess being given a nice gift would feel like somebody placing a very fragile yet very expensive vase into your hands, and it's worrying you because you don't want to smash it but you also can't help it, and that sort of tension. Basically, accepting kindness can be one of the hardest things in the world, so Allison and Katie had discussed it at length and decided not to go at all overboard with Katie's birthday because they wanted to be a level that doesn't overwhelm, a level she's able to accept. Otherwise it's not really a good experience for her, is it? You know, if the goodness you offer just leaves her having to ruin it and then leaves her feeling terrible for ruining everything, then that wouldn't be great. Katie came down to breakfast to find a birthday card leaning against a cereal bowl. Katie had not mentioned her birthday to Jackie. Most likely Katie thought that Jackie would not remember it. Katie was well practiced in avoiding disappointments. Jackie smiled and wished her a happy birthday as she was looking at the card. "Am I going to have a party?" Katie said with her innocent, lovely facial expression that could melt even the coldest of hearts. yes, a family party at dinner, you get to pick the dessert, and your dad and I have bought you a gift, and we're singing happy birthday to you after dessert. Why can't I have a big party? Katie seemed to be confused, not really angry, and certainly not sad, just confused. Well, honey, your dad and I decided you're not ready for a big party with kids yet. I wish you were. We'd love to give you one, and we're sad we can't. It's just that when you have too much fun, you get all mixed up inside and then do things that mess it up. We want you to have a good birthday, so we decided we're going to give you one that's just right for you now. But it's not fair. Every kid gets a party. I did last year. I know you did, honey. And Ruth said you screamed and threw things and had to be held. And the next day you broke all of the presents. You must have been so sad when you did that. Jackie believed what she was saying, but desperately wished she could be saying something else. You don't like me at all, Katie yelled. I do like you, sweetie. I want to give you a big party, and I'm really sad that I can't. I understand why you're mad at me. It must be hard to not be ready for a big party and lots of presents. I am ready. I wish you were, honey. It's sad that you're not quite yet, Jackie said quietly. Right. Did you notice the point that kind of has me beaming right now? The very genuine development here. When Katie didn't get her way, she said, you don't like me at all. Not you're mean or I hate you, as she's always just said in the past, but she expressed something with a little more meaning to it. Not just a flat, half meaningless you're mean, but when you stop me having things I want, it makes me feel like you don't like me, basically. So why is this so important? Well, for one, it means she's able to have a bit more dialogue and a bit more able to understand Jackie's reasoning. Hence, she argues she had a party last year, she understands Jackie's response and argues she's ready. That's dialogue. There's a kind of understanding and level of conversation happening here, rather than just her flipping into fight or flight mode and kicking stuff and screaming and not taking in anything. There's a little more control over her own behaviour here, because she's more aware of her feelings. To which I can segue into Dan Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson and their concept of the upstairs-downstairs brain. It's quite simple. The downstairs is like the foundations of the brain, the unconscious, more primal stuff, breathing, reactions to danger, survival instincts. Then the upstairs is your more complex intellect of thinking, imagination, foresight, all that stuff. You've got these two functions basically going on in the house, the upstairs and the downstairs, but naturally you need a staircase between them so that the two can work in harmony. Otherwise, clever as your upstairs brain may be, it'll have no idea what's going on downstairs, no awareness, no control over it, because there's no staircase to kind of communicate. So when things get too much, survival instincts just kick in and there's no ability to make sense of them. That was Katie, we've seen that in the past, but in this little interaction we see the beginnings of a staircase are appearing for her, and we'll see much more of it in the future. This is what a lot of the therapy and a lot of Jackie calmly helping to regulate Katie's anger and talk to her feelings underneath it. This is what it's slowly amounting to. And we can remember Allison's session where she talked, as though Katie, about how she feels Jackie doesn't like her. Now we see Katie able to express that same feeling for herself. That's a huge emotional development. I am ready, Katie said again. Her anger seemed less. She seemed to withdraw into her thoughts. She did not seem to be planning to try and change Jackie's mind or strike out at her. As Jackie watched her, she wondered if this was the closest thing to sadness that Katie could feel or show. And notice that, no kicking into red alert from Katie, not quite sadness. This is a girl who may not have cried at all since she was a baby, but the start of something. This is what processing your feelings and thinking about them and all of that stuff is about, because when your emotions are unknown and this strange alien thing going on inside you that's just a rise up of emotion, it's scary. It's like a big dark shadow, and because you don't know what it is, it has much more power over you. But if it does start to become think-aboutable, you can get a bit more grip on the feelings, and they become a little less scary and a little less powerful over you. And we get things like this start to emerge. Think when Katie will be able to express sadness. Think what gets to happen then. She gets to experience what it's like to be comforted when you're sad. After their discussion, Katie acted as if nothing had been said at all. Her dinner that night went well. She had picked a chocolate cake for dessert and ate her piece as rapidly as ever. Katie could devour sweets faster than they could be served. She smiled at everyone when the family sang happy birthday. She opened a present to find a jump rope and a bright blue swimming suit, at which she thanked everyone and seemed content. That night at bedtime, Katie sat on the edge of her bed as she always did and talked quietly about the day. I enjoyed spending your birthday with you, Katie. I'm glad that you picked chocolate cake. That's one of my favourites too. Can I have some more tomorrow? Well, I know there's some left, so I'll make sure some is saved so that you'll have some if you eat your dinner, Jackie replied. Then she added quietly, you might feel mixed up about that jump rope and swimming suit, Katie. I know it's hard for you to accept presents, even if they are small. I'll be happy for you if you don't have to destroy them. That would probably make you sad, but they are yours, and it's up to you if you keep them safe or wreck them. If you want me to keep them for you so that you don't wreck them when you get angry, I'd be glad to do it for you. Can I wear my swimming suit to the lake? Sure, sweetie, if you want. The next time you go swimming. Katie did wear that swimming suit a lot that summer. The jump rope disappeared. It would be a long time before Jackie discovered it had not survived as a present that Katie could accept. So I think that explains everything succinctly. Too much kindness can be difficult. Also, if Katie wants to destroy her presents, that's okay. There'll be no shaming or punishment. Jackie will have the awareness not to treat it as a personal rejection, and nor will the whole "I'll be happy for you if you don't destroy them" be said with any kind of guilt trip tone to it. It will just be said genuinely. It very much is like unconditional love because it's not about behaviour at all. Jackie will care for and love Katie exactly the same, whether she does good or bad. If she does good, the temptation might be to praise her, but for one, praise could be overwhelming, similar to too many gifts, and two, it might be implying it is about behaviour. Instead of saying, I love you as a person, it would be saying, I love you only when you do well. The long-term goal is really for Katie to understand that she can be loved. All of her. Everything about her. Because it's when she really starts to believe that the feelings of shame and self-worthlessness will begin to lessen. When she'll start to be able to love herself too. So Jackie's saying and really meaning I'll be happy for you if you don't have to destroy them. Because she knows deep down Katie would be sad about destroying them, and Jackie obviously would prefer Katie to feel happy. It's not about behaviour, it's about responding to their feelings. So speaking of accepting all of Katie, we have a therapy session where Allison helps Katie to draw two profiles of Jackie's face, adding a wide smile and kind features to one of the pictures and adding angry features to the other. And then Allison draws Katie's profile and does the same there, one happy, one unhappy. There you both are, and there are two of each of you. Since both of you can be both happy and upset, I thought that we should be able to see what you look like both ways. That's the basic setup here. They have some discussion about this, but I'm going to move it forwards to when they talk through a recent argument Katie had with Jackie, just like before. And Allison ends up speaking for Katie, just like before, during which we get this exchange. Allison speaking for Katie. Well, if you do care about what I want, why do you say no to me? Sometimes I think because it's important to do something else at that time. Or what you want to do is not good for you right then. I feel sad when I say no and see you're disappointed. I don't like to disappoint you, but sometimes I think that it's not best for you to do certain things, even when you want to do them a lot. Katie was now looking quietly at Jackie, seeming to believe her motives, or at least wanting to believe her. It was a new reality. A mum who didn't want her to feel disappointed, who did care what she wanted, even when she said no. This was also confusing. It was hard to believe it was real. Jackie softly touched her hand and whispered, "This must be hard to make sense of, Katie. I hope that you will trust me. But it will take a while, and that's okay." Katie had reached her limit. She became uncomfortable and said, "Stop talking." Jackie pulled back. "I guess you've had enough of this for today." And so the limit is reached and they stop. They pull things back and then move on to having a laugh again and all that kind of stuff to relieve the difficult moment. As a little tangent though, how often do we take the time to explain that kind of thing to our children? Preferably in moments where they're more calm and able to think. That sometimes we say no because we care, and it's sad to see them disappointed, but we're trying to help. It's kind of mad when you think about it, how many scenarios where discipline is readily applied to kids, but then just expecting them to understand these things without ever explaining it. I think there is often a lot more we can explain to kids than people tend to think, even if they might not like hearing the explanation, and they might pretend not to understand or to care and just get angry in response. But often I think they do kind of take it in. You know, Katie, having a mum can get a kid all mixed up. First she says yes, then she says no, she gives, she takes away, yes, no, what's a kid to think? It's almost like there's two mums, but there's only one. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, how confusing. You must have a yes and a no mum. A yes and no mum, Katie chuckled. Makes it hard to figure out, doesn't it, Katie kiddo? Yeah. Well, kiddo, that's why we drew those two pictures of you both, Allison said. You see, you are both yes and no people. When your mum says yes, she probably looks happy to you and good. When she says no, she probably looks mean and bad. And you, kiddo, when you feel happy, you have that smile and think you're good. When you feel angry, you have that look, and my guess is, at those times, you might think that you're bad. Allison allowed Katie to look at the pictures for a while. She then added, "You did a great job with those pictures. We're going to look at them some more times so that someday, Katie, you won't be so mixed up about who you and your mum are." I think it's very, very nice that Allison doesn't push the point far here, just raises the idea of something feeling good and bad, then lets us stare at the pictures for a while to visually consider it rather than taking it to the next step. It's such a simple point really, but one we all still get stumped by at points. Things can be both good and bad. People can seem both good and bad. We can feel both good and bad about ourselves. Right now, Katie will struggle with seeing both in one. Jackie will either be nice and they'll get on well, or there'll be a disagreement and Jackie is the most awful person ever and they both hate each other. Katie will probably be the same with how she feels about herself. We can do bad things and make mistakes, but it doesn't inherently make us bad. Life is very yin and yang in that way. Being bad doesn't outweigh everything else. It's not even in conflict or being measured against everything else. It's not the sum of who we are. The point is to come to a place where Katie can integrate both the good and the bad within one. Then things going wrong won't mean they hate each other. Then maybe Katie can believe Jackie does love all of her. Then after that, maybe Katie can love all of herself too. I think that's an ongoing quest for all of us, but maybe she can get on that road a bit further someday. But not yet, because this is where we finish for today. I hope you're starting to get emotionally invested and to care for Katie and starting to feel genuine delight in all those small moments where she does step the tiniest bit closer towards the sun. I hope you love this book just as much as I do, and if you do, please like the video, share your thoughts, subscribe, support me on Patreon, do whatever, and hopefully see you next time. And as ever, a special thank you goes to Devin, Kestrel, Arwen, Janice McMahon, Luke Orr, Chichu Kaber, Michael Gallagher, InSquares, Dustin Paulson, Samara Salsi, Sharikov2814, Joshua C. Follier, Chad Bramwell, Incomplete Sentience, and Nicholas Patrick. Thank you.